Eshkalar, hero song and story. Eshkalar, the song is already boring. Hi, I'm Eshkalar, your world's greatest Canadian wizard in residence. And today I want to do an addendum to my Mything Person series in which I discuss all sorts of matters mythological and traditional. Today I'm going to talk about a creature that exists both in our Judaic scripture and also earlier scriptures, as I think Lotan it was. But at any rate, it's called Leviathan. And Leviathan, is supposed to be a monster that if you read the descriptions, it's got multiple heads and arms and legs and fins and plates and spikes and flamethrowers and stings and all kinds of crazy stuff. As a matter of fact, it has just about every quality that a large animal might have, all mixed together. Wow. And it was giant. All right. The Greeks have a similar concept called the Hecatonchiere, I think it is, the hundred-handed giants of Hesiod. Well, when you see the descriptions of them, they had all kinds. They had many eyes and many teeth and mouths and hands and arms and legs and all this craziness. And you think, what were they getting at? What were they getting at? Were they running around being pursued by monsters that looked like they were drawn by a drunken Leonardo da Vinci with all the arms and legs and stuff sticking out? Or were they real? I'm here to tell you, and this will please all you seekers, because there is a seeker born every minute, as we well know. This is going to please you guys. They're real. That's right. The hundred-handed giant, the Hecatonchiere, is real, in a way. And Leviathan, the giant composite monster of Hebrew mythology, is real, in a way. So, there are places called choke points. After a mass extinction, a huge event, a lot of bodies laying there, and then storms come, and they wash these bodies down the rivers, down the waterfalls, down into places where they drain into cavern systems, or they drain into the ocean from an escarpment or a mountain. Yeah. And there are these places that look like drains, natural drains, right? The water comes down, pours down through that drain, then like shoots into a lake or shoots into a lower part of the river, whatever. It eventually becomes a cascade. But the point being, I'm training you. It's a Wattier material. So anyway, so what happens is these natural choke points become clogs with every kind of body mixed up in them. Yeah. So today it would be hippos and crocodiles and zebras and wildebeest and all this stuff all jumbled up together, big birds. So if you came upon all those bones together and you didn't know anything about, taxonomy, you might consider that there had been something weird going on there. And I'm going to continue this to give you the idea as to where this stuff comes from at all. Eshkalar explains the priest. In every tribal society, you have hunters and you have farmers. When you can. If you have neighbors, it's hard to be hunters, but you get the idea. So you have hunters and farmers. In many, what we would call primitive, but really what they are is they are just nodal arrangements, you have a tribe or a family. Small number of reproductive age males, small number of reproductive age females, a couple of elders, and a bunch of young, most of whom will die before they get to be reproductive, males or females. That is the world. As a matter of fact, that mix and balance of the world is pretty much how it was all through history until very recently when we're starting to age as societies because of things that they didn't have back then. Some good, some bad. So when you encounter one of these choke points where all the bones get washed into when all the floods happen, from big storms, and a lot of the places where we find what I'm going to talk about are places that at one time show evidence of having these big storms, which we still have all over the place. We have flood control because people want to build buildings and rent on floodplains. Dumbest thing ever. But they profit on it, and so they don't care. They don't care what I say. They're rich, live in wall-gated communities, but the floods still affect the people that live in these places. So anyway, these bone beds form. It's called a bone bed. And over years, say, if you believe the current estimates as to the age of things, and I have arguments with that because of the way radioactive breakdown works, and I don't think they're including some of the obvious ramifications when they date things. But at any rate, we're looking pretty far back in time. Let's say the Cretaceous, right? The Cretaceous era, which was the end of the great age of dinosaurs. You liars. Age of dinosaurs is as powerful now as it ever was, except now they're leaner, smaller, and more energy efficient. They're called birds. Yeah, yeah, birds are dinosaurs. They are theropod avian dinosaurs, just like Tyrannosaurus is a theropod non avian dinosaur. Yeah. Why do I know this stuff? I read cereal boxes. So should you. Don't eat this stuff. It's bad for you. But read the boxes and entertain you. What's a riboflavin, Ralph? Yeah, I know somebody really asked that question for real. So anyway, and God bless both of you. You're both gone, but still remember. Um, so what happens is you end up with a bone bed, the choke point where all the runoff carries the bodies. Because in a mass die-off, the crocodiles and other scavengers may also be dead. And even if they're not, they're still going to end up with bones, and they're going to be washed downstream. But generally, when you have a mass die-off like that, everything dies above a certain size. Everything dies above a certain size. That's the way it goes. Oh, shut up. So anyway, oh, that hurts. So anyway, and so you end up with this giant jumble of different bones, claws and spikes and plates and legs and arms and wings and skulls, 7 different heads. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's very easy to explain Leviathan, Leviathan, Lotan. It's very easy to explain it. There it is. And here's what happens. In this tribal community, where you either have hunter-gatherers or you have farmers, and in early communities, you had both, always. I know you say no, but it's true. Look at modern communities and you'll see it's exactly what they do. There were traditional breakdowns due to, you guess. I'm not going to tell you what. I do cultural anthropology, but I don't tell you that it has to be a certain way. I just give you my observation. So, anyway, what you have is, in these cases, in these ancient tribes, and some of the more current ones, you have division of labor between the male gender and the female gender. And the female gender stays at home, raises the children, and farms. Makes the clothes. See what I'm getting at? Prepares food that needs prepared. Farms. Harvests. Repairs clothing. Makes clothing. Raises the kids. Does little things on the houses as the grass falls down or the roof starts to creak. So the female gender, I'm going to call them the women, and you can say what you want. I'm no more sensitive than any human man. Maybe a little more sensitive than some. Anyway, so the women will stay home, and they farm, and they cook, and they make the clothing, and they raise the kids. That means they are the bearers and the carriers of culture. This is very important. All right. And then the male gender, the men, go out and they hunt. And if they're lucky, they bring back meat. Meat is good. Meat enough to feed the whole group. It can't be just meat for one person. That's where you get the dichotomies that end up in political divisions. I'm talking about elementary, before those illusory divides form from broken minds. So, the men are out there and they may find something else. They may find colorful feathers, a pretty rock. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get out there and earn their keep without having to work hard back at camp, which is what the women are doing. I'm not kidding here. I'd love to make jokes about this, but it's so true. I'm amazed that people don't get that already before Eshkalar, your old pal Eshkalar, has to buzzkill you. Bang. So, now, each personality type, whether male gender or female gender, man or woman, or alternative, because there were poets and there were priests, and that's what I'm going to talk about here, had some fairly clearly defined functions within the community, the tribal unit, the family unit, so the village. Now, some of the men more than some of the women, and there are reasons for that that are based on testosterone overdosing. We're not good for the traditional tasks. Wizards aren't good for traditional tasks, let me tell you. But we're great at being wizards. I can whiz farther than you can. Want to have a contest? Just write your name on the back of a check for $1 million, and I'll get back to you as soon as I'm done spending it. So, these people that didn't get along with the traditional jobs, had a couple choices. You could die. You could piss one of the hyper males off and he'd kill you. You could not pull your weight, and the tribe would stone you and probably throw you in the pot. Or you could come up with a con. Tell me that life isn't still like that today. Preachers saying that God says they need a 747. Come now. If God wanted you to fly, you'd fly. So he obviously doesn't want you to fly. And he obviously, ask any religious leader, doesn't want you to spend your money stupidly. And buying a 747 for a guy that God could easily give the power of flight to is about the dumbest thing you can do on this earth. Send that money to a battered women's shelter. Thank you, signed Eshkalar. Anyway, so there are people that don't fit these traditional tribal designations. The arrow maker, the archer, the spearman, right? The sniffer. They don't have those qualities that make for a good member of the tribe that way. Or the hunter, is it rotten? Right? And the chewing, is that what? Right? Doesn't have these these propensities toward what can become specialized skills that are entirely useful within this small genetic unit, tribal unit, village unit. Real stuff here. So, but the men are out doing stuff because they know that they'll have to work if they come back. So they go out and find really interesting stuff. The most interesting stuff they can, including meat, right? And if they find truffles, they're bringing them back. And they mostly loaf and they jerk around and they, push each other into creeks and stuff. And somebody gets hurt, like kids. But they come back and they bring all this stuff, like twice a week. They show up. Here are the men. They got a deer, or maybe they got a pig, or maybe they got a bunch of frogs. I don't know. But whatever, they bring it back. Something the women didn't have to work for. And they're like, yay! Just enough excitement that everybody gets laid and more babies are made. Familiarity, as the poet says, breeds contempt. I love saying this stuff. So, that happens a couple times a week. But then, as I was pointing out earlier, there are types of people, and there are people born that don't fit those traditional, I am going to go out on a limb and say gender-based roles. The female gender-based role, which is the sedentary role. You stay home and you work like a dog. And the male gender roles, which are essentially hunting, gathering, and herding, which are pretty... If you like being bored, those are the jobs for you. Really. I'm going out to the hunting. I'm going out to the camp for the weekend. I want to go hunting, dear. Are you sure there's enough room for all the beer in the station wagon? My buddy's bringing the rest. So, These people that don't get along with these traditional tribal roles have to come up with a con, or else they'll be thrown out, or eaten, or killed, or whatever. You see what I mean? Made into eunuchs once we get really organized. Right? Superfluous to the tribal's needs. That makes you an enemy. For many primitive cultures, the word enemy and stranger are the same. Get it? This is how people work. Science misses a lot of stuff because it's based all on one side of the brain, the mathematical side. Mathematics never reveals secrets. It merely confirms models, predictions. So, these people that can't get along in the other ways, let's say you were born lame. You can't hunt and you can't fish. Not very well. Maybe you could fish. But you are forced by your environment to compensate for your obvious physical or mental lacks. It's tougher to do when you have a mental lack. But if you have a physical lack, born with a withered hand, have problems breathing after your runaways, are very liable to get sick. When everybody's sick, you get sicker. These things are not conducive to the tribal existence, so there'll always be a runt in a litter. But that runt is often consumed by the society in some way. Thrown out, turned into stew, forced into slavery. Or they come up with a con. Well, hey you, lame guy, why aren't you helping us hunt? Well, I can't help you hunt. Well then, what the hell are you going to do for your supper? I'm glad you asked that. Do you mind listening for a minute? I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, we get awfully bored around here. A story would be nice. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So that leads to a subclass of the human condition called the priesthood. It's people who think quick. People that know that their days are numbered unless they can keep running a con. You think I'm kidding? I'm so right here that I wish I could convince you, but I would rather you find out for yourselves. So they run a con. They say, well, God speaks to me. He tells me stuff. Well, why doesn't he tell us stuff? Well, because he doesn't want to stress you with it. These are the really deep secrets, the ones that hurt the brain. And he gives them to me, and I try to translate them so I can tell you these pretty stories before you go to sleep at the end of the night, the end of your difficult day, you girls. When you come back into town, you guys, while you're drinking and getting ready to make babies, I am the radio. I am your talk radio. I am your television, your HBO, your Cinemax, your Redbox. I'm the only one. So I have a story to tell you today. When the hunters came back from their last hunting expedition, everybody's having a good time. Well, it wasn't so good. They brought back a couple capybara. You really want to taper, you know, but they brought back a couple capybara. So there'll be a stew and everybody get a little bit and it'll have a meaty, stringy thing in it. But it won't be the same as all gorging on fresh meat. But still not bad. Well, they come back and the women are eyeing them up saying, there's a couple of capybara worth all the effort we're going to put on for this. And the men are like, uh-oh. Priest, tell us a story. Oh, we want to tell you something, priest. We found this thing out in the rocks there, you know, where the desert starts, and we don't know what it is, but you'll know because God talks to you, right? Yes. Well, we found this big thing that looks like arms and legs and heads and necks and like a giant snake in one place and big, huge bones. I mean, you wouldn't believe them. And when we touched them, they weren't made out of bone. They were made out of stone, different stone. Our tools couldn't even hurt some of it. What the heck? Arms, it must have had 100 arms. Must have had 7 heads. Must have had 50 legs. What the hell, priest? We feed you for free. And the women don't make you work. So tell us a story while we're trying to get the girls interested so we can have a big party. The priest goes, yeah. In the beginning, there was the primordial void, which was given manifestation as a giant monster called the Hundred-Handed Giant. And there was more of them, because you guys said you found another one of these places. So yeah, there was more than one. There was this Leviathan, this monster made out of all the other monsters. All the descriptions are of monsters that are like parts of other monsters, not a whole monster. Many legs, many arms, many plates, many scales, many wings, many whatever. And these are the runoff bits from a mass extinction. And they're all over the place. If you go to the right places, you'll see. When I say all over the place, I mean if you go to the right areas where these strata are exposed by erosion or river work or whatever, or tectonic work, you will find bones exposed from the stone. Big jumbles of bones. What the heck was that, priest? God, he wanted to make the world, but he didn't have anything to make the world out of. So so this giant monster, the chaos that was there before him, it came and attacked him. And he went, here's what we do, and I'll beat him up and chop off them bits and form the earth and form the cosmos with it. Cosmos means law. Chaos and void are supposedly synonymous, but we chaotics know there's a big difference. The void is emptiness, the void is law, but chaos is pure creativity, and law is pure subjectivity. There's a big, enormous, massive, wonderful difference between the two. So you have lawfuls, and they make good plumbers and electricians. And you have chaotics, and they make good hunters, and they make good dancers. Huh? Yeah. And then you got the people that don't fit in, and they make good priests. Oh yeah. And if you have the gift of gab, golly, that helps. The first priest, I'll bet he was both lame and had the gift of gab from childhood. I know a kid like that. Grew up, became the most irritating adult, but he's interesting to listen to. So anyway, the priest has to come up with a story. And so he comes up with a story of a giant multiple monster. Because there it is in the stone, priest. You better explain it. And why is it stone? God hit it so hard, he drove it into the rock. Or it fell 3 days. Yahoo! Bang! Yeah. It became part of the stone. God is great. Yeah. By now, the girls are starting to get drunk, and the guys got their arms around him, and the priest can walk away now. Because the business of the tribe is going to go on. He's done his part. He told them an interesting story. He gave them a feeling that there is a connection between all the things that they see and some superior reality in which these things make sense. A schema, an order, law. And that makes people a lot less antsy. And when people are less antsy, they can be much more productive in a healthy way. When they're more antsy, they tend to overcompensate by working too hard, but it burns them out, and it puts stresses on the social part of the society that are unneeded, unnecessary. Motivating people by anxiety is bad motivation. You motivate people by the desire to contribute to a communal existence that everyone enjoys. And that's the priest's purpose. I'm lame. I can't hunt, or I don't like to hunt. And I can't farm, or I don't like doing brutal labor. You would be amazed at how much labor the women in these societies do. Some of which are still extant today. Go watch yourself. And the priest, the person that can't fit either of these gender-based role sets, skill sets, so has to come up with a con so that they keep defeat him, and they keep providing him with clothing for the cold nights and a place at the fire, which are crucial not only to raw human survival in the physical sense, but to a person's sense of self. I belong. I'm contributing. I've earned this somehow. And there's the story of the 100-handed giant. And there's the story of Leviathan. And there is the birth of the priesthood. This is your old pal Eshkalar concluding Mything Persons and saying, thank you for your time and effort. I very much have enjoyed this experience. And now, I must go. Ow, ow, don't levitate when you're drunk, kids. Ow.